Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. Is the city of Vancouver about to revamp its big density plan, the Broadway Plan, along the Broadway Corridor? Last week there was a protest at City Hall. We're going to talk about some of the stuff that came up out of the protest. We're going to talk about condo ownership in general in the city of Vancouver, as well as other parts of Metro Vancouver. Real quick, if this is your first time to the channel, my name is Hassan. I'm a real estate agent in the Vancouver area, and I make educational real estate content to help you on your real estate journey. When I'm not making videos like this, I'm helping people just like you buy and sell real estate across the Lower Mainland. So if that sounds interesting to you and you wanted to chat with me one-on-one, you can book me for a free call in the Calendly link below and on screen, and subscribe to this channel so you don't miss a future weekly video. All right, so I want to jump right into this. We're going to talk Broadway Plan. We're going to talk density. We're going to talk about how condo ownership is changing in Metro Vancouver, and we'll start with a protest or a rally that happened at City Hall regarding the Broadway Plan. Now, the Broadway Plan, just to give you a bit of a refresher. If you've watched my channel, I've done videos on it, but essentially it's a densification plan for the Broadway Corridor, all the way from Clark to Vine, and it basically follows the Broadway subway project, which obviously billions invested into that project. They want to build density surrounding that. So this Broadway plan, what it has done, and it was enacted in 2022, was it allowed for up to 20 stories, depending on where you are along that Broadway corridor, how far north, how far south you are. And so this Broadway plan gets put into place in 2022. And just last week, we have a rally now with people protesting against the plan. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, okay, here come the NIMBYs. The NIMBYs have come out and they don't want this happening in their backyard. And now all of a sudden the development applications are out there and people can see how their neighborhoods are going to change. Now, if you're thinking along those rights, you would be right to some degree, but a lot of the people that showed up to the rally were not so NIMBY. Well, I guess they were NIMBY, but they weren't actually owners in the area. So we're not talking about people that own real estate that were concerned about these towers basically covering up the sunlight or anything like that. A lot of these people that came were tenants and renters, and because of the Broadway plan and how the development works, at risk of getting displaced. Now, Kitsilano, for instance, I believe I talked about this on my channel before. Kitsilano, for instance, 20 to 23 towers being proposed for Kitsilano under this Broadway plan. And so, with renters, it's an interesting scenario when it comes to this density plan, because the city of Vancouver actually included some of its most renter-friendly protections for development that happens with the Broadway plan. So, for instance, you're a developer and you purchase say a multifamily rental building because you want to develop under the Broadway plan. Now, when you are demo-evicting essentially these tenants, you now have to come up with a plan, a rental plan for them. So if they're getting displaced and they're getting displaced into higher rents, you're going to have to cover that delta between what they pay now and what that higher rent is. And when your project is complete, you're going to have to invite them back at the same rents they're paying today. Very, very heavy tenant protections. Yet, at this rally and in opposition to the Broadway plan, you had a lot of tenants and renters there saying, they didn't want to be displaced. And, it's so funny with the city of Vancouver and Metro Vancouver and density. It seems like we just cannot get out of our own way when it comes to densification. Like everywhere you turn, someone has a problem with what's going on, and I understand it's hugely disruptive to have to leave where you live and then come back, etc. But the deal is sweet. The deal is really sweet to move out of, say, an area like Kitts and get your same rent back. But again, opposition to the plan. Myself personally, with the Broadway plan, I see a bunch of gaps. We're going to talk about a couple of them. I see a bunch of gaps in there. Number one, just to circle back to the Kitsilano thing. I don't live in Kitsilano, but I don't love to see what I consider to be a little bit of a recreation community, definitely a beachside community. I don't really love to see towers and towers and towers at proposal stages for this area of the city, of the plan, and very weakened demand, I guess, as you go east in terms of these development proposals. But you can wrap your head around why it's happening. Now, with this Broadway plan, and this is where we get into the whole condo ownership thing, you have segments of the plan. Basically, you can do rental housing, you can do a purpose-built rental tower, or you can do a strata condo construction where you would market and you would sell these units. You can actually purchase into these units. And the way the plan is constructed is heavily favored towards building a purpose-built rental versus building market condos. And so one of those favors would be extra density. So if you're going to build a purpose-built rental, the plan will allow you to build more square footage. And anytime you have extra density, that's more rentable space. So you're able to generate more revenue. Whereas on the strata condo ownership side, if you're going to make market units for sale, you don't get that added density. And so you see all of these condo projects or proposals being put into place, many of them in Kitsilano, many of them stretching quite far north towards the beach, and pretty much all of them, a huge chunk of them, are rental condos. And so your ability to own real estate, strata condo, in Vancouver, and specifically the west side of Vancouver, Kitsilano, some of these highly desirable areas, even downtown, it's diminishing because these towers that are getting built, they're being built as rental. You're not going to be able to purchase any units here. And when you're building a purpose-built rental, sometimes you can get more favorable financing. There are perks for a developer to go the rental route. And long-term, they get to hold on to that piece of land as well. So, you're going to see these areas of Kits, west side of Vancouver, where you're not going to be able to own anything there. You're going to be able to rent. It's going to be a heavy, rental presence. And some of these rental towers, I don't want to say all of them, but, the way they're built, they're not built to be the most aesthetically pleasing buildings. If you look at some of the plans that are put into place, I don't think they look particularly good. And we're looking at, one of the cornerstone areas of our city, again, circling back to Kitsilano. Are we going to have these eyesores everywhere that are just there for function and to be able to allow people to rent? And again, the developers are going and focusing on these areas because they can achieve the highest rents there. And they need that to be able to have the money to work. But again, your opportunity to own, it's shrinking. And we look at, projects such as Sinakwa, which is basically at the south end of the Broad Street Bridge, 6,000 rental homes coming there, land owned by First Nations. We have Heatherlands, which is further east, but still west side of Vancouver. We have Jericho lands, and those are also properties that are owned by First Nations, and they will have condos coming to the market that are leasehold condos. So this is different than owning a strata condo where, in fact, you purchase into a tower, you do own a portion of that land. Whereas if you're purchasing a leasehold, you do not own any portion of that land. The land is on a 99-year lease typically, and you own your unit itself. So you'll get a better entry point because you're not paying for that land in there. But again, you don't have the full rights of condo ownership. So when we look at Vancouver in general, everything is shifting to rental. Everything is shifting to leasehold. When we talk about Sinakwa, the 6,000 rental units there, and we talk about these other development applications that are being put into place, all of these rental units, or if they actually make it to fruition, that's a whole other topic. But if these were to go through, they all start competing against each other. Who's going to be able to undercut who when it comes to rental rates? It's whoever has had the land the longest and the lowest cost on the land. Whereas now, if you are a developer and you're going to purchase these properties right now along the Broadway Corridor, you're paying hugely inflated rates. So although there are all these towers in proposal stages at different rezoning stages, because the city didn't do a mass rezoning, so you still have to go through the rezoning process, a lot of these may not fully come to fruition because of some of these challenges we've talked about. construction costs, labor costs, all of the costs are up, and are the numbers still gonna make sense? In downtown Vancouver, you're seeing a ton of projects shift over from market condos for sale to purpose-built rentals with a hotel component, so that you get the revenue from the hotel, and oftentimes that's a model that is going to work for developers. So when I talk to buyers specifically, and they talk about condos, for instance, I have a client I'm working with right now. We're buying, I wouldn't call it, I guess it is a luxury condo. It's over $1 million, but it's a higher end condo. And his concern is that, what about all this condo inventory that's, sitting around right now? What if more gets added in the next month or the next two? And my advice to him, I said, look, very likely there will be, and very likely there will continue to be price fluctuation. But the way we have to look at this condo inventory, and especially you as someone who's purchasing a home for the next 7 to 10 years, is what is condo inventory going to look like in 5 years from now? What is it going to look like 7 years from now? And the reason I say this is construction has pretty much screeched to a halt now, with the construction costs, with the labor costs, unable to achieve margins in a province and a country that doesn't really incent investors getting into the housing market. And the investors are the ones that make pre-sales work. They're the ones that help developers hit the pre-sale minimums to actually build out. So housing starts are completely falling off a cliff. And when this happens, we have to keep in mind that the work that is done on these development projects today amounts to units in the next 3 to 6 years. So if stuff isn't happening today, we are going to be in another condo and housing crisis in the next 3 to 6 years. Right now, there is inventory for people to purchase. And the federal government, lofty plan, they say we're going to build 3.9 million homes by 2031. And the reality is they know they can't do that. That's record-setting numbers, and we're basically setting records for having the lowest amount of housing starts. So they know we can't do that, and so what they're doing is they're jigging around with immigration. They're making sure our population doesn't grow, because we can't house everyone. And so when people come to me and they're concerned about, again, condo inventory, is it saturated? Is the market going to crash? I always tell people, we need to keep that long-term vision in terms of what's going to happen with the condo market and housing market in general over the next 5 to 10 years, because that's generally the time period that you're buying real estate for. And I think, again, once this inventory of newer condos gets eaten up in areas like, Brentwood, Lougheed, Surrey, Central, for sure, I'm already seeing a lot of the inventory now, the resale inventory, starting to get sold off. Once that gets sold off, we're going to be in another situation where, again, not building now, not building over the last year. Next year, I think, is going to be a very low year for housing starts. I think pre-sale projects are going to struggle to hit their minimums, to get their financing. I think lenders are going to be a lot more stringent about how they are going to finance these projects, given all of the foreclosures and risks in the market. As you may have seen last week's video, we talked about how developers are struggling right now. And so we see that pullback. We'll see that pullback amongst development. Circling back to the Broadway Plan and the City of Vancouver changes they're looking at, apparently they're looking at increasing that density. So right now allowing for 20 stories, but now basically saying, look, we may actually look at going more with the density, going higher with the density. They have restrictions in place where you can only have 2 towers for certain blocks, and once those 2 development applications are in, you can't put your application in. And that's another reason why we're seeing all these development proposals go through, is people want to make sure that they lock down their opportunity at being under this plan. They may look at rejigging that and allowing for more towers as well. But what I'm curious to see, what we should all be curious to see, is how much of this is actually going to move ahead. How much of this is actually people just, we'll call it development application banking, in the sense that they just want to get their applications in so it's there. They don't lose their place in line, if you will. They don't lose their place on the block. I think a lot of these rental towers, I think, they're probably not going to get off the ground either. Because again, from a density perspective, so many challenges facing us in the market. And I don't mean to make this video as doom and gloom. You know, the way I see it is we have a real opportunity over the next 6 to 8 months, and probably longer than that, but specifically for first-time buyers and end-user buyers, I think there's a huge opportunity next year where, you know, investor types on resale properties, they're gonna bow out a little bit. They already have, you know, I call it, you know, the death of the investor, not commercial real estate, not land, but on resale properties, specifically condos and maybe townhomes, detached properties. You know, I kind of view that as land now, because that's essentially what it is, people that are buying detached. But when we look at condos, you know, that investor element pulls out of it. You know, tenant gives notice and now they want to sell their units. There's gonna be a lot more of that happening next year. Rates coming down to more manageable levels, less competition. I see opportunity for first-time buyers, condo buyers next year. But again, I urge you to have a long-term focus and really, you know, think about, talk to realtors you trust, talk to myself if you like, but really think about what is the long-term outlook of development in this city, in Metro Vancouver, in the Fraser Valley. What is that going to look like? Because that ultimately is what's going to affect your long-term value of your real estate. And again, circling back, you're going to see Vancouver is going to be heavily rental. It's going to be heavily leasehold condos. The opportunity in Metro Vancouver or Vancouver proper to own a strata condo, it's going to diminish over time. Now, having said that, Fraser Valley, Surrey, Langley, even Lougheed area, further east, pretty much everything that gets built is for sale. It's strata condo, and you can purchase, and it makes sense because people are moving in that direction, number one, for affordability. But when consumers are moving for affordability, it's because developers have already moved there for affordability, being able to create a product that they can actually sell into the market. But now when those pre-sales are selling at $1,200, $1,300 a square foot, where's the threshold? Where do we get to the point where the market can't absorb it anymore and the developer says, well, I need to make some margin or I'm not doing this? I think we're closer to that than we might think. So there you have it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this week's video. If you did, hit the like button, because what that does is it takes the video and it sends it out to more people so they can also learn from it. And if you enjoy weekly real estate content, subscribe to this channel so you don't miss next week's video. And lastly, again, if you're in Metro Vancouver, the Fraser Valley, you want to chat with me one-on-one about your real estate situation, you can book me for a free call, or you can just give me a call, send me a text, shoot me an email, whatever's easiest for you. I'd be happy to chat with you. But I want to thank you again for watching this week's video, and I look forward to seeing you next week.